I had 30 seconds before he said, "I do," to destroy the lie that stole 8 years of our lives. Standing at those cathedral doors in Seoul, my traditional Nigerian gele wrapped tight around my head like armor, I watched Soo-jin through stained glass windows. He looked exactly the same. Sharp jawline, that nervous way he adjusted his cufflinks when stressed. 8 years, and my heart still jumped at the sight of him. "Mama, is that really Daddy?" David whispered in Igbo, his small hand squeezing mine. Daniel pressed closer to my other side, his 8-year-old eyes wide as he stared at the man who'd never held him. "He looks like the picture you keep hidden." The woman in white beside Soo-jin turned slightly. Designer dress, perfect makeup, everything I could never afford to be. Everything his mother always said he deserved instead of me. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, where stories like this reveal the secrets families try to bury. Because what I discovered that day changed everything I thought I knew about family, love, and the lies people tell to protect their perfect lives. I pushed through those heavy wooden doors, my Ankara dress a burst of color against all that pristine white. Every head turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The cultural divide hit like a slap, their shocked faces, my defiant entrance, my boys clinging to my hands like lifelines. "Look at all the fancy people, Mama," David murmured, switching to English now. Daniel's grip tightened. "Why are they staring at us like that?" "Because we didn't belong." That's what their faces said. Because 8 years ago, his family made sure I knew exactly where I stood in their world. Below. Invisible. Disposable. The wedding march played softly, but I could feel the tension crackling through that cathedral like electricity. Soo-jin hadn't seen us yet. He was focused on the altar, on the woman who was about to become his wife. The woman who didn't know what I knew. What my boys carried in their DNA. We walked down that aisle, me in my vibrant yellow and green Ankara, my sons in their small suits that I'd saved 3 months to buy. Every step felt like walking through quicksand. Whispers followed us in languages I understood and ones I didn't. "Is that an African woman? What is she doing here? Those children." That's when I saw her. The bride. Her phone buzzed in her bouquet, and she glanced down with practiced discretion. Her face changed. Panic flickered behind that perfect smile as she read the message. My blood went cold. She was typing frantically with one manicured finger, "Plan B activated. Eliminate all threats. Now." Another message popped up. "Security team in position. Handle the woman and children quietly." The woman getting married to the father of my children was texting about eliminating us. Right there. At the altar. While promising to love and honor the man who'd given me everything before his family ripped us apart. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled David and Daniel closer, scanning the cathedral for the security team she'd mentioned. There, 2 men in dark suits by the side entrances. Another by the main doors we just entered. Professional. Positioned. Waiting. The bride looked up from her phone, smiled radiantly at Soo-jin, then let her eyes drift across the congregation until they found mine. The hatred in her gaze was ice cold. Pure. She knew exactly who we were. She knew about my boys. She'd planned for this moment. The officiant was speaking about love and commitment while the woman in white plotted our disappearance. The irony would have been funny if my children weren't in danger. "Mama," Daniel tugged my dress. "That lady keeps looking at us funny." "And those men by the doors," David added quietly. "They're watching us too." My brilliant boys. They'd inherited their father's sharp eyes along with his stubborn chin. Nothing got past them. Right now, that terrified me. The bride's phone buzzed again. This time I caught the full message, confirmed targets. Mother and 2 male children. Ages approximately 8. Nigerian woman in traditional dress. Proceed with quiet removal after ceremony begins. They'd been watching us. Tracking us. This wasn't coincidence, this was orchestrated elimination. I looked at Sujin, still oblivious at the altar, straightening his tie the way he used to when we'd argue about his mother's phone calls. Still the same nervous habits. Still the man I'd loved enough to carry his children in secret for 8 years. He had no idea his bride was a predator. He had no idea we were here. He had no idea that in about 20 seconds, everything he thought he knew about his life was about to shatter like glass. The officiant raised his voice. If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed. This was it. 30 seconds had become 20. Then 15. The security team shifted position. The bride's grip tightened on her bouquet. My boys looked up at me with complete trust. And Sujin finally turned around. His eyes found mine across that cathedral, and I watched 8 years of carefully constructed lies crumble in his face. Time stopped. The officiant's voice faded to background noise. The security team froze mid-step. Even the bride's frantic texting paused as she followed his gaze to where we stood. Sujin's mouth opened slightly. His hand dropped from his tie. That same expression he'd worn the night I told him I was pregnant, shock, wonder, and something that looked like relief all mixed together. "Daddy?" Daniel whispered, so quietly only I could hear. But Sujin heard it. In that massive cathedral with hundreds of people, somehow he heard my son's voice calling him what he'd never been allowed to be. "I need to take you back. To Lagos, 2016. To when everything was possible." He was 26 then, this tall, awkward exchange student who couldn't pronounce jollof correctly no matter how many times I corrected him. I was teaching African literature at the University of Lagos, and he'd enrolled in my Yoruba language class as an elective. The pronunciation is jollof, not jolove. I'd laughed, watching him struggle with the words that came so naturally to me. But jolove sounds more romantic, he'd grinned, that dimpled smile that made my stomach flutter. Like food made with love. He was so different from the men I knew. Quiet where they were loud. Thoughtful where they were impulsive. He listened when I talked about my research, about the oral traditions of my grandmother, about the way stories carried truth across generations. In Nigeria, we say that a story has the power to change the listener, I'd told him one evening as we shared rice and stew in my small apartment. "Then you must be very powerful," he'd replied, reaching across to touch my hand. "Because you've changed everything about how I see the world." Those were golden months. He'd call me, "my beautiful professor," in that careful English he spoke when emotions overwhelmed him. I taught him to cook Nigerian dishes. He showed me pictures of Seoul, promised to take me there someday, introduced me to his family. I should have paid more attention to how his voice changed when he mentioned his mother. The phone calls started in month 3. Always in his language, always ending with him looking stressed and apologetic. "She worries about my studies," he'd explain when I asked. "Does she know about me?" His pause lasted too long. "She knows I'm happy here. Happy. Not in love. Not serious. Happy. Like I was a vacation from real life. But I believed in us. Especially when he whispered promises in the dark, when he traced patterns on my skin and told me I was his future. When he said he'd never felt this way about anyone. "I want to build something with you," he'd said the night we found out about the babies. "A real family. Our children will know both worlds, yours and mine. Our children. Plural. Because from the beginning, we knew it was twins." Standing in that cathedral now, watching him stare at David and Daniel like he was seeing ghosts, I remembered that night. How his hands had shaken as he held the ultrasound photo. How he'd kissed my stomach and whispered, "Hello, my sons." Back then, I thought his tears were joy. Now I wonder if they were fear. The congregation was getting restless. People shifting in their seats, murmuring in multiple languages. The bride had resumed her texting, her fingers flying across the screen with increasing desperation. Su-jin took a step toward us. Just one step, but it sent ripples through the entire cathedral. His groomsmen looked confused. His mother, I recognized her immediately from old photos, stood up from the front pew, her face a mask of horror. Su-jin. The bride's voice cut through the tension, sweet and commanding. Darling, who are these people? These people. Like we were strangers who'd wandered in from the street. He couldn't finish the sentence. His eyes kept moving between David and Daniel, drinking in details that only a father would notice. David has his nose. Daniel has his stubborn chin. They both have that way of tilting their heads when they're thinking, that habit I'd watched Su-jin develop during those months in Lagos. Mama, David whispered in Igbo, why does Daddy look scared? Because he was recognizing them. Because after 8 years of believing we were dead, he was seeing proof that everything he'd been told was a lie. The security team was moving again, subtle shifts that most people wouldn't notice. But I grew up in Lagos. I knew predators when I saw them. Boys, I murmured, stay close to Mama. Is something wrong? Daniel asked, his voice carrying that adult worry that 8-year-olds shouldn't have. Everything was wrong. The bride's phone buzzing constantly. The security team positioning themselves. The way Su-jin's mother was whispering frantically to the man beside her, his father, I assumed. But mostly, the way Su-jin was looking at us like we were miracles and disasters wrapped in the same package. He took another step. Then another. The officiant cleared his throat, clearly unsure how to handle a groom abandoning his altar to approach strangers. Sir? The officiant's voice carried that special politeness people use when they're trying not to cause a scene. Perhaps we should continue with the ceremony? Su-jin wasn't listening. He was 15 feet away now, close enough that I could see the exact moment recognition fully hit him. His face went white. His hand started that familiar shake I remembered from Lagos whenever he was overwhelmed. It's not possible, he whispered, but his voice carried in the cathedral's acoustics. The bride's mask slipped for just a second. Pure rage flashed across her features before she composed herself. Su-jin, darling, who are these people? Do you know them? Her voice was honey over broken glass. He looked at David, then Daniel, then me. I thought. I was told. Told what, darling? The endearment sounded like a threat. Su-jin's mother was moving now, her traditional dress rustling as she approached from the side. I recognized the look on her face, the same expression she'd worn in every photo he'd shown me. Disapproval mixed with determination to control the situation. This is highly inappropriate, she announced in accented English, clearly for my benefit. This is a private ceremony. Yes, I replied in perfect English, my professor voice cutting through the cathedral. I can see how private it is. My sarcasm landed exactly as intended. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. The bride's phone buzzed again, and this time I caught a glimpse of the message over her shoulder, now. Before situation escalates. That's when Su-jin focused on Daniel's wrist. On the small birthmark shaped like a crescent moon that he'd kissed 1,000 times during those Lagos months when I was pregnant. Oh God, he breathed. The recognition was complete now. Undeniable. David's laugh when something amused him. Daniel's way of chewing his lip when nervous. The way they both stood with one hip cocked, exactly like their father. 8 years, I said quietly, but my voice carried. 8 years I raised them alone. You're supposed to be dead. The words escaped him before he could stop them. The cathedral went completely silent. Even the bride stopped typing. Dead? I repeated, my voice rising. Who told you I was dead? But I already knew. I was looking right at her, his mother, whose face had gone from disapproval to panic in the span of seconds. There was a certificate, Su-Jin whispered. Childbirth complications. Both you and the babies. Both babies? My voice cracked. You knew it was twins? I never stopped looking for you. Even after. I hired investigators. For years. They all said the same thing. That you died. That my sons died. Your sons. He said it like a prayer. Like a truth he'd carried in secret for 8 years. The bride's phone was buzzing continuously now. Her composure was cracking, revealing something desperate and dangerous underneath. And that's when Daniel, my beautiful, brave Daniel, looked directly at his father and said the words that changed everything. We're not dead, Daddy. We've been waiting for you to find us. Act 2B. The silence that followed Daniel's words was deafening. Su-Jin dropped to his knees right there in the cathedral aisle. His expensive suit forgotten, his wedding forgotten, everything forgotten except the 2 small boys staring at him with his own eyes. We're not dead, Daddy, Daniel repeated, his voice carrying the weight of 8 years of questions. We've been waiting for you to find us. For 3 full minutes, Su-Jin studied their faces. Not quick glances, deep, desperate examination like he was memorizing every detail he'd missed. David's dimpled smile. Daniel's habit of biting his lower lip. The way they both shifted their weight to their left foot when nervous. The birthmark, he whispered, reaching toward Daniel's wrist where the crescent-shaped mark peeked from his sleeve. You still have the birthmark. Daniel nodded solemnly. Mama says it's where the moon kissed me. That broke something in Su-Jin. His composure shattered completely as tears started falling. The congregation erupted. Whispers became conversations became chaos. The bride's phone was buzzing so frantically it sounded like an angry wasp. This is impossible, his mother declared, her voice cutting through the noise. She was standing now, her traditional dress immaculate, her face a mask of controlled fury. These children are not family. Look at them, I said quietly, but my professor voice carried to every corner of that cathedral. Look at their faces and tell me they're not his. His mother's eyes darted between David and Daniel, and I watched her recognize what everyone else was seeing. The resemblance was undeniable. Grandmother, David said suddenly, using the English word because we'd practiced this moment 1,000 times in our small Lagos apartment. Mama showed us your picture. You're prettier in person. The simple innocence of it, my 8-year-old son trying to bridge an 8-year gap with a compliment, made several guests gasp. His mother's mask slipped. For just a second, I saw the grandmother she might have been. Then steel replaced vulnerability. If you're feeling that same shock I felt, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because what happened next changed everything we thought we knew about family, love, and the choices we make to protect the people we love most. The bride finally moved. She stepped down from the altar, her designer dress rustling, her phone clutched in her manicured hand like a weapon. Su-Jin, her voice was honey over broken glass, whatever game this is, we need to finish our ceremony. But Su-Jin wasn't listening. He was focused on Daniel, who had started whispering something under his breath. What are you saying, little one? Su-Jin asked. The song Mama taught us, Daniel replied. The one you used to sing to us before we were born. And then, in his sweet 8-year-old voice, Daniel began humming a lullaby. Not in English. Not in Igbo. In his father's language, the one I'd learned just to sing to my unborn babies. Su-Jin went white. How do you know that song? Mama learned it from you, David explained matter-of-factly. She sang it to us every night. She said it was our daddy's song. And you taught me your childhood stories, Daniel added, his voice gaining confidence. About the monster under your bed that was afraid of thunder. And how you used to hide your vegetables in your napkin during dinner. These weren't things I could have Googled. These weren't public knowledge. These were intimate details that only someone who'd shared months of whispered conversations would know. The night terrors, Sujin breathed. You told them about my night terrors? You used to wake up calling for your father, I said softly. I told them their daddy was brave, but sometimes brave men have scared little boys living inside them. The bride's composure finally cracked. Enough, she shrieked. This is manipulation. These people are scammers trying to destroy our family. That's when the wedding planner appeared with a tablet, his face pale with anxiety. Ma'am, he addressed the bride, there's been a situation with the security footage. The bride's face went sheet white. What situation? The cameras captured some, concerning meetings yesterday. The catering supervisor wants to discuss. Not now. The bride snatched the tablet and tried to delete whatever was displayed, but several guests had already crowded around. On the screen, clear as day, was footage of the bride meeting with 3 men in a hotel lobby. The audio was muted, but their body language spoke volumes. Money changing hands. Documents being exchanged. Plans being made. What is this? Sujin's father demanded, stepping forward for the first time. The bride was typing frantically on her phone again, abort. Situation compromised. Eliminate all evidence. But it was too late. The guests had seen enough. The whispers were becoming accusations. Mama, Daniel tugged my dress, why is the pretty lady so angry? My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold his. Have you ever felt that moment when everything you believe just shatters? Tell me in the comments, because right now, I need to know I'm not the only one who's been this afraid. Because that's when Daniel did something that changed everything. He started counting. In Igbo. From 10. IRI, he said solemnly, his small voice carrying in the sudden quiet. 10 years ago, Mama was a student too. A memory flashed, Sujin and me studying together in the university library. Itulu, Daniel continued. 9 years ago, Mama got her teaching job. I remembered celebrating my first professorship, how proud Sujin had been. Asato. 8 years ago, we were born. The cathedral was silent except for my son's counting and my racing heartbeat. Asa. 7 years ago, Mama cried every night. The year of my deepest depression, when I thought he'd abandoned us by choice. ICI. 6 years ago, Mama started teaching us about our daddy. When I finally found the strength to tell them about their father instead of hiding from the pain. ISE. 5 years ago, Mama showed us Soul on the computer. Planning this moment. Preparing for this day. Ano. 4 years ago, Mama saved money for airplane tickets. Working 3 jobs to afford this trip. Otto. 3 years ago, Mama learned his language. Teaching myself everything I needed to communicate with his family. Abuo. 2 years ago, Mama bought our good clothes. The suits my boys were wearing, saved for month by month. Otu. 1 year ago, Mama promised we'd meet our daddy. The night I finally told them we were coming to Seoul. Fu. Daniel looked directly at his father. 0. Today, we found you. The silence stretched like eternity. Then Sujin whispered the words that broke everyone's heart, your mama never forgot me. And we never forgot you, David added quietly. Even though we never met you before. That's when his mother, the woman who'd erased us from his life, said the words I never expected, the death certificate was fake. The cathedral erupted again. Louder this time. Accusations flying in multiple languages. What? Sujin staggered to his feet, looking between his mother and me. I said the death certificate was fake, his mother repeated, her voice barely a whisper. We made it to protect the family. You told me they died. Sujin's voice cracked with 8 years of grief. You told me my children died. To protect our bloodline, his mother said desperately. To protect the inheritance. If the board discovered illegitimate foreign heirs. She stopped abruptly, realizing what she'd revealed. The bride's phone clattered to the cathedral floor. Her hands were shaking as badly as mine now. The inheritance clause, Sujin whispered, the pieces finally clicking together. This wedding. The merger. It was never about love. Our bloodline, his mother whispered, swaying slightly. The company, the inheritance, what will the board say when they discover? And then she collapsed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. She simply crumpled like a paper doll, her traditional dress pooling around her on the marble floor. Chaos erupted. Security rushed in, not the bride's security team, but actual medical personnel. Someone called for an ambulance. The bride was screaming about ruining everything. But through it all, Sujin knelt beside his unconscious mother while my boys stood frozen, watching their family implode in real time. Is grandmother dead? Daniel asked in his matter-of-fact way. No, baby, I said, moving to kneel beside her too. She's just very shocked. And despite everything, despite 8 years of lies and systematic erasure, I found myself checking her pulse, loosening her collar, doing everything I could to help the woman who'd stolen my children's father. Because that's what mothers do. We protect. Even when it hurts. Even when it doesn't make sense. Even when the people we're protecting tried to erase us from existence. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. We sat in separate corners, his family on one side, mine on the other. 8 years of lies creating an invisible wall that seemed impossible to cross. David and Daniel sat pressed against me, their small suits wrinkled now, their eyes wide with confusion. They'd gone from excitement about meeting their father to watching their grandmother collapse to sitting in this sterile room where no one knew what to say. Mama, David whispered in Igbo, why doesn't Daddy's family want us? How do you explain systematic erasure to an 8-year-old? How do you tell your child that his existence was considered such a threat that people forged death certificates to hide him? Some people are afraid of change, baby, I said softly. They think love has to look a certain way. Across the room, Sujin sat with his head in his hands. His father patted his shoulder awkwardly, speaking in low tones. The bride was nowhere to be seen, she disappeared during the ambulance chaos, probably to destroy evidence of her elimination plans. The wedding was definitely off. A doctor emerged from the emergency room, still wearing scrubs. Family of Mrs. Lee? We all stood. Even me, though I wasn't sure I qualified as family. She's stable, the doctor announced. Severe stress reaction, but nothing life-threatening. She's asking to speak with. He consulted his chart, the woman with the children. Everyone looked at me. She wants to see me. I couldn't hide my surprise. Sujin's father nodded grimly. She's been conscious for 20 minutes. Your name is the only thing she said. The room they led me to was small and private. His mother lay propped against white pillows, looking fragile in a way that reminded me she was human, not just the villain in my story. Chioma, she said my name carefully, like she'd been practicing the pronunciation. Mrs. Lee. I remained standing, my hands clasped behind my back. Sit. Please. I perched on the edge of the visitor's chair, ready to bolt if this became another confrontation. I have something to show you. She reached into her purse with shaking hands and pulled out a small wooden box. I've carried this for 8 years. She opened it. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to Sujin in my handwriting. All returned to sender. All with Nigerian postmarks spanning years. You tried to contact him, she whispered. For 3 years, I sent letters. Emails. I even hired someone to deliver messages in person. My voice was steady, but my hands weren't. Every single attempt was blocked. I know. She picked up one letter, dated 6 months after the twins were born. This one had photos. She handed it to me. Inside the envelope I'd never seen opened were pictures of David and Daniel as babies. Me holding them in our small Lagos apartment. A note explaining that they were healthy, that I'd named them after biblical kings because their father had mentioned loving those stories. You kept them all? Every letter. Every photo. Every attempt you made to reach my son. Her voice broke. I told myself I was protecting him. Protecting our family legacy. But I was really just afraid. Afraid of what? Of losing him completely. Of watching him choose a life I couldn't understand or control. She touched another letter. Of admitting that love doesn't follow the rules I was raised with. The door opened softly. Sujin stood there with David and Daniel, their small hands clasped in his larger ones. Mom? His voice was careful. Controlled. The boys wanted to check on grandmother. David and Daniel approached the bed with the fearless curiosity of children. Daniel reached out and touched her hand. Does your head hurt, grandmother? He asked in English, his 8-year-old voice full of genuine concern. She stared at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Saw the kindness in his eyes, the way he tilted his head just like his father when worried. A little, she admitted. Mama makes tea for headaches, David offered helpfully. Nigerian tea with ginger and honey. It works really good. Really well, I corrected automatically. Really well, David repeated with a grin. Something shifted in her face. The rigid mask cracked, revealing the grandmother she might have been if fear hadn't ruled her choices. I would like to try Nigerian tea, she said softly. Sujin's eyes met mine over the boys' heads. 8 years of grief and longing and lost time stretched between us, but also something else. Hope, maybe. Or just exhaustion from carrying secrets too heavy for any one person. There's more, his mother said suddenly. About the wedding. About why she targeted our family. The bride. I'd almost forgotten about her in the drama of hospital visits and family revelations. The marriage was arranged for the company merger, she continued. But she knew about the inheritance clause. The one that excludes heirs born outside traditional marriage. What inheritance clause? I asked. Sujin's father stepped forward. Our company's board structure requires all heirs to be legitimate. Born within approved family structures. It's an old rule, designed to prevent messy succession battles. So if the board discovered David and Daniel, I started. They would automatically inherit equal shares, Sujin finished. The merger would be void. The bride's family would lose their investment. She knew about us. David looked up from where he'd been studying his grandmother's medical bracelet. She's been watching your family for months, his mother admitted. Planning to eliminate any threats to the wedding. To the business deal. The full scope of the conspiracy hit me. The death certificates weren't just about hiding an inconvenient relationship. They were about protecting a business empire built on excluding people like my sons. But we're here now, Daniel said with 8-year-old logic. So the bad lady can't hurt us anymore, right? Right, Sujin said firmly. No one will ever hurt you again. His mother reached into the box again and pulled out a document I'd never seen. A birth certificate. 2 birth certificates, actually. I had these made when you were born, she said quietly. Official documents recognizing David and Daniel as my son's children. As my grandchildren. You had them made? My voice was barely a whisper. Even while I was blocking your letters, some part of me knew this day would come. That the truth would surface eventually. She looked at the boys, then at me. I was prepared to acknowledge them if I had to. I hoped I'd never have to. And now? She struggled to sit up straighter, her formal politeness returning like armor. But when she spoke, her voice was gentler than I'd ever heard it. Now I'm asking if you'll teach me to make that tea. And if. She looked at David and Daniel, if my grandsons would like to see their father's childhood room. David's face lit up. Daddy has a room here? A whole house, their grandfather said with the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. With a garden where he used to hide when he didn't want to practice piano. I hate piano too. Daniel announced, making everyone laugh. The sound filled that hospital room like music. Like healing. Like the beginning of something I'd never dared to dream possible. There's one more thing, Sujin said quietly. He pulled out his phone and showed us a text message. From her. The bride. The message was simple, merger cancelled. Threats eliminated. Family legacy preserved. She thinks she won, I said. Let her think that, his mother replied, reaching for David's hand. We know the truth. These boys are the real family legacy. They're the bridge between worlds. David looked at Daniel, then at their father, then at me. Does this mean we get to stay? Like, forever stay? Suji knelt down to their eye level. If your mother agrees, you'll never have to leave again. This is your home too. Both your homes. Both homes? Daniel asked. Nigeria and here, I explained. You'll know both worlds. Just like Daddy promised before you were born. The boys considered this with the seriousness of children making life-changing decisions. Can we have jollof rice and kimchi for dinner? David asked. At the same time? Daniel added. Every night if you want, their grandmother said, and I realized she'd been listening to every word we'd ever said, learning our world even while she tried to exclude us from hers. Maybe love really doesn't erase culture. Maybe it just makes room for more of it. So what happens now? I asked. Sujin stood and extended his hand to me. Not romantic. Not presumptuous. Just, honest. Now we figure out how to be a family. All of us. However long it takes. I looked at his offered hand, then at our sons, then at his mother who'd kept our letters for 8 years while pretending we didn't exist. It might take a while, I warned. We have time, he said simply. We have all the time in the world. I took his hand, and David and Daniel cheered like we just won something important. Maybe we had.